Hello and welcome to Property Matters. My name is Paul Allen and welcome to this week's edition of the show, a show that's designed to be of interest to all people who have an interest in property. Property Matters is supported by Fairview International and also by Town & Country Property Auctions London. From LTVs to leaseholds, there's plenty to discuss in the news every week in the world of property. And I'm delighted, of course, to say that you can have your say in the show by commenting on the video below in the comments section, or, of course, if you'd like to email us, propertymatterstv@gmail.com. And joining me, my resident property expert every week is Joe Joshi. Good morning, Joe.
Morning, everybody. Morning, Paul. A fantastic week for property, I think. Rishi obviously has been dishing out the good news all round. So plenty to cover today on that. I'm sure you'll have lots of graphs and your usual charts, etc. for me, Paul. So we'll look forward to that.
Yes, it was probably the worst kept secret of the week, wasn't it? Richie announcing the extension to the stamp duty holiday. I'm pleased to say we've been muttering on about it for months, but we actually got the final details. And of course, it is the case that he is now extending the guarantee or the holiday rather, to the 30th of June. So those properties up to the value of £500,000 won't pay the stamp duty. And then there's this rather curious tapering, Joe. So many people saying all he's done is simply just extended the cliff edge until the end of June from the end of March. Whereas if he'd have said something like, well, those people who had a mortgage offer by the 28th of February, let's say, you are able to complete by the end of 2021 or within 12 months. And then the rest of you can have an extra few months to get yours in or whatever. But if there was some kind of cut-off point, that would have been better, I think, than this rather curious tapering off whereby it'll be reduced to 250,000 by the end of September and then back to the 125,000.
Yeah, I think, as you say, it's curious, but at the same time, in some way, looking at it from Rishi Sunak's desk point of view, what he's obviously conscious about is whilst he's dishing out money left, right, and centre in order to keep the whole pandemic and the country afloat. I think one of the things that you got to bear in mind is that they have a hell of a lot of money coming in from stamp duty, and so the longer he leaves it, the more demands people will have and say, we've got this now, why can't we have it forever? And before you know it, they get used to it. So I think it's a really difficult choice. But we had already predicted the best kept secret. We've been predicting that for the last God knows how many weeks, and we knew that there will come a time, or the last minute, I said it would be lastminute.com, that he would end up having to do a veto on the stamp duty, which is exactly what he did. He kept it till the budget day, but as you say, it was the worst kept secret ever because everybody had been pushing for it. And I think the tapering thing is there, that again, the same thing, because people are going to now, even now, Paul, the market has shown significant signs of the positivity of what the budget brought for the property market. I can't say it's always for everybody else, but overall, I know there's always going to be someone that's unhappy. There's never going to be a happy 100% on this. So he's trying to best please as many as people he can. But I will just stick to my sector, and then property is the best sector that there is. You all want to buy a house. This is the opportunity that has been presented by Rishi Sunak with the stamp duty, and of course. Other areas that have now been offered out. But I think, stamp duty wise, the tapering that till September, it goes down to 250,000. It just kind of, I think it helps him bring the year to a close, all being well, that with the numbers falling in the pandemic, which is obviously, good news for the UK. I know that the travel companies are saying that people are ready to fly out, but they've also now going to bring in some sort of a passport, which will say that if you haven't had the 2 vaccinations, you're not going to go anywhere. And that was again something that was always going to be in the offing, and I think will become standard, going forward. But I think with the stamp duty thing, it's a great opportunity for the first-time buyers still, to get a chance up to £500,000 till the end of June. The good thing about not putting a date on it and a time on it is that it still leaves the door open for people, even the current market, to be able to go and buy something that they want to buy or they've got their eye on, and conclude matters by the end of June. And of course, if it's less than £250,000 of the purchase price, which opens the rest of the country up, it's given them till the end of September to complete. So their race is not as stringent as those are in the south, perhaps, where house prices generally are going to be exceeding that sort of £500,000 mark. Whereas in the north and the other parts of the country, where people have started to move quite a lot too, and thinking about where they're going to, sort of travel from and so forth, that then gives them a chance up to £250,000, and that still keeps them under the stamp duty threshold. So I'm sure he's got a method behind his madness. I'm not totally adverse to where he's going. And the other thing, of course, is, Paul, that it will fuel the prices. And obviously, the longer you give this whole thing, the whole task of trying to get first-time buyers and young people onto the first run of the ladder is going to be, just literally run away with the whole idea, because there will be investors that buy these properties to rent out. And what he's trying to do is, Boris is obviously saying he wants to create a generation of buyers than a generation of renters. And if he continues to leave that door wide open, then investors, what are they going to do? And that's the key thing as far as I'm concerned. They really got to come up with a strategy for investors. And I know, listening to the budget, that he was talking about some of the green sectors where people can invest and they'll give some sort of return. And probably we need to look a little bit more careful into that and see if that is something some investors would look at, what the risk factors are. Maybe I'll look at that for another program. But I think really the government needs to come up with something that is going to keep investors away, especially elderly investors who actually don't really want the trouble of leaking taps, to be perfectly honest with you. They would rather see some good return on their money on a scheme that gives them comfort, and they can be off on their cruise, and enjoy the benefits of that. And I think that's really something that the country needs to bring in at some stage, because there's no faith, no security in pretty much anything else other than touch it, feel it, and see it, which is property.
You raised a couple of points there, Joe, and the one that's been the big criticism of Rishi Sunak's action, and he justifies it by saying, I've got to support 500,000 jobs in property. Well, fair enough. But by the same token, all he's done for the last year, you say he's going to fuel house prices. It's already happened, Joe. You know that. In the last year, the prices have gone up 6-7% in a year, and rising even faster. And we've got evidence here today of, Rightmove's website almost crashing from over-demand, record demand, from people now trying to get a house in the next 3 months. It just do you know what it reminds me of, Joe? It reminds me of when we used to have these New Year's Day sales at the various supermarkets, and there was tellies on offer for £100, and the queue was a mile long, and then everybody bundled in until somebody got hurt, and then it was stopped. It's the same principle, isn't it, surely?
It is, and I think that kind of had its own fun principle. The bundling of the TV. Then he probably, the poor bugger who got the TV, probably crashed it because he was trying to get it in the first place. But
lost the plug out the box.
Yeah, he yanked it out and said, "I'm having that." But the thing with the house prices and the demand on property is, Paul, we are a nation of homeowners. And I've said a million times on our program here that it is the hub of pretty much everything. And that's why they balance their life based on people's demands. The psychological demand is that I want to own my own property. One day I want to buy this. And of course, when they set these goals, these goals always generate a certain surge in the marketplace for a certain number of people. Now, you have to remember that whilst the pandemic has caused a lot of issues, a lot of personal issues, a lot of losses, family losses, a lot of bereavements, a lot of grief for our own people, it also has created something else, and that is that no one's been out. And because they haven't been out, they've actually been saving a lot more money.
Yeah.
The pubs and the bars and the restaurants have suffered at that. But the people's pockets are a little bit better off because they're not having to spend that money on a weekly basis to go down the pub. Though I'm sure, I think a couple of days ago I was listening that the pubs gardens are booked up already for when the onslaught comes on, because that's the way we all are. We just want to go and have it all in the same shop.
Yep.
But for the purpose of our property matters, is that people have the funds now. He's given an opportunity for people to say, right, okay, well, if you don't want to rent your place, that off you go and buy. Rental in itself causes another set of issues for landlords too, and that is also in the coming. That's a system waiting to go gaga right now, because whilst people have been good in their rental, some of the people have not been paying their rents at all because they haven't been able to, because they haven't got jobs. And so there's going to be a whole tsunami of court cases where people want those tenants out. And that's completely another set of issues that will come. So every time something happens, it has a knock-on effect that continues to affect other people. And it relates around what we discuss every week, which is property matters. And property is one of the safest places to be. And that's one of the reasons why it gets fueled for the house prices. Every week, every time you put your charts up, someone turns around and says house prices are going up. Well, how many people have actually written up and said, car prices are going up, or all of a sudden, because they're all going to come electric? If anything, that's going to be detrimental to the car industry rather than not, because every person's going to have to go and try and sell their car, which is going to go down in value, to go and buy a new car, which is going to cost a lot of money. So there's no win situation in those scenarios. So I just think that as time goes on, property is the strongest, and I think the tapering way is the only way, because otherwise we're going to have everybody's foot on the accelerator and go fast, and house prices will get out of reach again.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because the stamp duty really wasn't so much of an onerous thing back as far as just recently as the 90s. So it's only since the 90s that successive governments have seen it as an opportunity to generate revenue off of people wanting to move around, I guess. But back in the 90s, it really was a minimal amount and didn't earn a lot for the government. And there is a lot of people say we shouldn't be taxing the home buyers in this way. We should be reducing stamp duty tax, or even obviously abolishing it. I know we've talked about that before, but also people are saying that particularly going to that higher rate, to the 10%, for the higher rate properties is particularly prohibitive even, and should be reconsidered by the government. What's your view?
Yes, again, you can continue to tax the rich. It's just going to be always there. But I think it was designed in order to get the best returns for their money. You can't always, that old adage of, the lost leaders. That's always going to be at the bottom end of the market, where people the turnover is much more. The turnover isn't as much in the top end, and so. The stamp duty will probably remain for the higher. It's just how many £10 million properties are actually sold, as opposed to a lot of £250,000 houses. So that's going to remain. And whilst it's not, it seems to be a unfair thing. Obviously, the government see it as a fair cop on the basis that if they've got the money, then they got to pay for it. The only thing it really destroys is probably the international market, because obviously a lot of our more expensive homes are normally bought by international buyers coming into the country.
Interesting piece in today's Conveyancer this week, which says that they are estimating there's 628,000 sales still in the legal process, Joe. across the UK. And those are ones that have been agreed even since last year, but they're still, for whatever reason, in the system. So that's, 628,000 contracts or deals that are in the system already. They reckon that now, because of the new holiday extension, another 300,000. That's almost 1 million sales in the system. I mean, the system just isn't going to cope.
Well, I've said before, the system is archaic in terms of the conveyancing system that exists at this moment in time. It needs to be sped up, and the process needs to find a route that can actually deal with them. The annoying thing is, Paul, that it's the old questions that continue to come. It's always the same things. Each time somebody moves in, it's the same. I mean, they are paraphrased almost, but they just seem to take forever and ever for each time to come in. And unfortunately, the legal system, will continue to want to tick its boxes and sign things off and so forth. And people are, it's as much as the legal system's fault as it is the client's fault, because no one acts on it as quickly as they should when they get it. Every time you wait a week for something to not to do, it's adding 2 weeks to the process of something else, because that week means that it's got to go back to the other side, and then the other side starts to ask questions for the other. It just goes on and on, and that's where the delay. And I'm a little surprised that, in the world of website, in the world of emails and so forth, it takes still that long for a transaction to happen. And this is where, from Town and Country Property Auctions London point of view, our view is that anybody that wants to sell something now and actually complete by June, that process is much easier, much clearer and transparent. You get your information about, on the property ahead, and you get a chance to buy and deal with it and complete prior to this. The conveyancing structure that is based on private treaty is just archaic. It takes too long, and sales fall out. So whilst there might be another 300,000 sales, some of those people are actually going to pull out and not be able to get in. And some people can't get their mortgages, and before you know it, those numbers are falling by the wayside. It's also an expense for buyers who spend their money on surveys and instructing lawyers and getting searches done and so forth, and they're not actually able to do it. So I think there's twofold there in my mind, Paul. Yes, the conveyancing system, but equally the money lending system is also very, very tight, considering so much now happens online. And again, that takes forever. I mean, surveyors can't get out, or surveys can't be done, and before you know it, constantly there's a delay in the system.
Well, he says, I recently moved, and the delay in the process was the searches. COVID was the cause, or blame of the cause, due to a lack of staff. I guess people are going to be furloughed, or they've got to self-isolate, that kind of thing. And on top of that, Joe, late stage collapse fees costing the buyer, on average, state agency fees of £5,440. So you get all the way to the end of June, and there's going to be more people going in, another 300,000 going in the top end here. And if they don't get it done, the collapse will cost them $5,500, best part of.
That's interesting, that actually. The $5,500 will really not cost so much the buyers. No estate agency cost are there, because there's hardly any buyer that pays any estate agent to purchase a property. The only time that exists in my mind, or I understand, is when they buy in auction, and that only happens if they exchange contracts. However, yes, I accept the fact that there are going to be searches and land registry costs, etc., which the lawyers will put onto the buyers, and probably some sort of forfeiture because of the legal system that they weren't able to complete. And again, it's the same system that actually creates the problem that charges them. It's very frustrating. I mean, I've been in a state agency for now 40 odd years, and we were never able to charge a buyer to turn around and say to them, "Oh, can you pay for our, because you've now decided not to buy it." It was like hard luck. You wasted 3 months. You chase the time, you chase the lawyers, you try to chase their lender, and then they wake up one morning and said, we had a fight and decided we're not going to buy it, and that's the end of that. So I wouldn't say it was the agent, but the system, yes, definitely does make charges, and people do need to understand that those costs are there.
So England, Northern Ireland, Wales are doing it. Scotland have decided not to extend. They will finish on the 31st or 1st of April. They'll be back to normal.
Yeah.
Can we read anything into that?
Well, the reading into that really is that, their attitude is very, very similar in terms of, we want to have our own laws. And Scotland's laws and purchasing is completely different to ours anyway. And so they will stick to that. I mean, in Scotland, the minute you made an offer, you're almost committed, let alone exchange contracts. And there are penalties there. But in the United Kingdom, our system is more than fair, to be honest with you. If you buy, what they should do is really they should penalize those people that make offers without substantiating their position to purchase. In other words, they come along and they make an offer on a property, and then when you ask them, do they have the finance, can they get their mortgage and so forth, they then start that process then, Paul. And the problem by starting that process then is if they've had some sort of difficulty in their previous life, maybe some sort of judgment, county court judgment, all of that comes up, and before you know it, they can't get the mortgage, and then they come back and say, oh, we changed our mind. So actually, there should be a lot of homework done, and that's an education that agents must give to their buyers before they even put their offer. And unfortunately, we're salespeople and we want to sell. And if you get the offer coming in, you want to be talking to your vendor because you want to keep your vendor happy to say, here is a situation. I've got a buyer and, he made an offer and it's obviously going to be acceptable, and off you go. And it goes in the system. But the system itself needs to be properly policed and administered from the day one, and understand whether these people actually that make the offer are in a position to buy. And that in itself has got to change. And that's where obviously either they've got to get confirmation from the lender or their mortgage broker, whoever they might be using at the time, or the agent's got to make sure that they've got all their ducks in a row so that they can actually make a offer, put forward an offer to the seller, knowing that they've actually done their due diligence. But when you've got a busy market, all you're trying to do is keep all the plates spinning on all the sticks and hoping that one doesn't fall off. And then when they do, the statistics turn around and say, look at that, it's a fall through. There's 50% of the people that were buying now not buying. That's partly because the due diligence wasn't done in the first place.
Mm. I mean, there is an irony now, isn't there, in the fact that because the price is rising so fast because of the interest and the demand in these properties, most people will be spending more than the saving they would have made because of the price increase.
Yeah, I guess there's gonna be a bit of give and take in those scenarios. We're not gonna get it all, Paul. He's just got to accept. But as I said, if the right guidance and advice was put together, then I think people would make a informed decision about what they're buying. Equally, they will have an informed decision of their ability to buy. And if they can't get that, then it's no good putting them on that run of the ladder. I mean, I have a number of people that call me and say to me, look, I want to get a mortgage. I want to speak to somebody about this. And I tend to say to them, first and foremost, before they even start, that they should get themselves, get their Experian report or Equifax report. You can do that now online. Everybody can do that. And so if you go online and do your report, at least you now know what the market is going to see about you, about your circumstances. And then you can adjust and make that. Now, if you've got a problem that's been on there for some time, then over the next 3 to 4 months, you could start to straighten that problem out and have a chance to go to a lender and say, I knew I had a problem, but I've dealt with it. And here is a clean bill of health. The problem is that most people tend to say, yeah, I've got the income. I can do that. My broker said I can get that money, but actually no one has really done the actual search. And the first time that normally gets done is when it goes off to a lender, and the lender says, right, thank you for your application. We're now going to do an experience search on you because you've given us authority to do it. They then get the search, and then they come back to you and say, well, we can't lend you the money on that on the basis that you've had 3 county court judgments in a certain period. So what I'm saying is part of that is education, and that education should happen from the minute they sit on the desk or on the phone and say to you, look, I want to buy a property, and what do? Well, this is what you do. You find out if there's any warts. And if there are, then we need to get that rectified first. and then we can help you try and achieve the goals that you want to do. But it's the other way around. When that happens the other way around, that's probably 3 weeks of wasted time. Because by the time they come in, send out the application, agree the offer, send it off to the buyer, the seller says, yeah, I'll accept it. Then the mortgage broker gets instructed. The mortgage broker then sends an application. The application goes to the lender. The lender then says, oh, hang on a minute, you don't need to do that. Why should you have to do that? I mean, it's online. You can do this for yourself, £10, £15, whatever it is. I'd rather be spending £10, £15 than spending 3 weeks hoping and praying and waiting that maybe somebody's not going to see something that's not there. The world cannot hide. It is always there now. You know yourself, being in the IT world, that footprints are left, and people will find that. So it's better to know what you're doing. That would be my advice, and that's what I try and tell people. I had people here this week who have said, 3 years ago, they had approached me and said, I want to do this, and I said, well, what's it? And they explained their circumstance. Everybody has good times, bad times. And I said, look, why don't you do this? Go and get yourself down this line, get that cleared, get that tidied up, and come back. And they came back this week and they said, our score is, I think, 899 or something, which was, apparently 600 and something when we discussed it almost 3 years ago. So they've taken they've taken that good advice on board, tidied up their situation. We put it in front of a broker who then turns around and says, oh, well, that's great. Excellent news. I can get that lending done by X with this, that, the other. Now we're on the right track, and there's a chance that matter will conclude with the correct advice. That will conclude by the end of June. But with the wrong advice, or the wrong guidance, should I say, then of course, they'll be all going at the end of June going, the Chancellor's a bad guy because I can't save my money. It's up to the Chancellor to sort out those issues. You've got to get your house in order. That's what's important, and that would go out to any buyer, anyone that's looking to buy, anyone that's looking to sell. I would give that advice. You've heard it here, and you can always contact me, and I'll be happy to go through with that and talk to you and put you in the right direction. Because I think that's very important that you get it right from the outset.
The importance of good advice, indeed, Joe. I just wanted to show you this. The Rightmove site saw 9 million visits for the first time in its history, overtaking its previous record of just over 8.5 million visits recorded last week. People spent 71 million minutes last week on Rightmove, and they hit 9 million on Wednesday, immediately after the budget announcement. So that just gives you an idea of the frenetic activity. Perhaps maybe that's a little over the top, but it just appears to be from this kind of information here. The average time the average time from a seller to find a buyer is 65 days nationally, and Rightmove estimates that it will currently take a further 126 days to go through the legal process. So that's actually isn't that just over 3 months? 126 days, I think it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
So the suggestion is, if you went on and agreed a sale on Wednesday, the 3rd of March, April, May, June, you might just make it if you did it this week, or this certainly by the end of this month, things could be looking a little bit risky for you.
Absolutely, and that would be the case if you are continuing down the systems that exist. But if you are taking some of the guidances that I just set out, then yes, you would shorten that time quite a lot. And then it's just between the lawyers to try and sort out the actual legal aspect of that. But that advice is the same for sellers, Paul. Sellers can do a lot of things ahead of getting their property sold, but they don't tend to. And the reason why they don't tend to is they're not been guided, they're not been advised, they're not been shown what they can and can't do, and they don't tend to instruct. I'll tell you what the biggest fear about is always about the cost, but in the long term, there's a bigger cost. But it's always about the cost. So in my mind, when a seller wants to sell their property, they need, on the day they instruct their agent, they also need to really decide who the legal guy is going to be and instruct their solicitor to start to prepare the basic documents that they're going to need in order for it to go out, a contract to go out as soon as a buyer is found. But they don't. That's not because they don't understand it and they don't know it. It's because they've not been shown that that's probably what they need to do. And secondly, they don't do it because they think, well, I don't want to incur a cost, because if I don't sell or the buyer backs out, and what happens, you know. But on the other hand, what happens if you get to the stage and you want to buy something yourself, and because you haven't done the things you should have done, all of a sudden you lose it, and then you've actually spent a lot of money. So it's a balancing trick. But I think there are lots of firms out there that will be happy to do business, knowing that is a cost that they can't incur until such times the sale happens. But equally, it gives the lawyers, the solicitors, the chance to get their files up and running. You know, even the basics now, for money laundering, you have to provide documents, you have to send copies, and people don't do it. And irrespective of being in 2021, there are a lot of people that don't have a scanner at home. They don't have the stuff that they want, or the printer's inks run out, or something's happened, you know, and that's going to take a week before they get to their office or somewhere else or a friend's house. It just takes time, and that you don't realize a week is actually very short now. I mean, we are in March of this year, and you know, where has that time gone already? And that's the problem with the system. So it's good that we have these numbers to give guidance on, but those numbers can be shortened if the right guidance is given and they take on the right advice. It can be done, and there are people out there that are happy to help to do that. And that's, if you want to call it, been part of the success that I've had, where my clients tend to come back to me because they know that I'm going to try and get them in a shape to get on. And that's the only way I'm going to make my money, to be honest with you. What's the point of looking at it? I always say pretty pictures on my wall are not going to pay the bills. You know, I'd rather it come in, you know, be sold and everybody be happy and get on with it, rather than just saying, oh, I've got another instruction. Well, it doesn't matter. I've got another instruction. It doesn't, you know, it's not going to pay the bills. So I think good guidance is very, very important. And it's part of the reason, you know, Property Matters is part of our Sunday structure, part of my structure, because I want to try and make sure that, you know, at least we try and give the right guidance, and people should be able to pick up the call and call us and talk to us. And both avenues are there, you know, both being on a private treaty through our Fairview International opportunity where we can sell ordinarily, or of course, Town and Country, which is our auction arm, which is a great tool. And when you're sitting there waiting to buy and sell, auction is not just for properties that you think are there, oh, they're in a bad shape. That's, people go to auction because it's the last resort. Auction is a method of sale that allows you to move, and it's definitely worth seriously thinking about. And I'm always happy to discuss that.
Right Move is saying that sellers will need to be on the market by the 23rd of March if they want to make sure that their buyers can take advantage of the tapering end to the stamp duty holiday. So 23rd of March is your big day if you want to get your property on the move. So moving on, Joe, as we find time is always against us. So CGT, well, we kind of wondered whether there would be any changes. The truth of the matter, not now. I suspect it will come, but there's a bit of relief for sellers potentially to know that their gains won't be increasingly taxed if they make a move now.
What a great window of opportunity for those that want to sell and not have to pay that extra CGT that has been talked about for some time now. And of course, as you rightly say, you know, it's probably just parked, but it's going to be moving off that parking position pretty soon, and something will happen on that. So whilst the opportunity for saving stamp duty is alive for buyers, equally there's an opportunity for saving CGT for sellers. So if there was ever a time to sell, now is a good time to sell and to buy. So I think that yes, of course it's going to come, and he's got to collect his money back somehow. So you know, someone somewhere is going to pay for it. It's just a matter of time as to where that's going to come. But the good thing is that we have all, you know, come through this, or almost on the way of coming through that. And the decisions that they've taken with the virus and with the vaccines, etc., seems to be going in the right direction at this moment in time. Of course, we never know when that spike's going to hit, and it's certainly an unprecedented area that we've had in terms of our lives. But I think the window of opportunity with CGT is that this is, if you're going to sell and if you need to sell, then now is a good time, and take advantage of it, because it will come back to bite us at some stage.
Yeah, I mean, there hasn't been change since 2009. The threshold 325,000 not changed since then. All eyes are on the autumn, according to the latest reports. And interestingly, HMRC say that CGT receipts this year so far have been the highest they've ever been. And year to date, 10.4 billion has been taken off of people. It's slightly galling, isn't it? Because at the end of the day, this is money that's already been taxed, Joe.
Yes. I always say there's two people that are definitely going to collect their money, come what may, and how it is going to be. One is going to be HMRC, and the other is the bank manager, because 90% of the people have got money borrowed by the bank, so they're going to come and collect their money, and of course the government will collect theirs. The double is a double tax. We pay stamp duty when we buy it. And then, of course, we have to pay a capital gains tax when we sell it, only on the properties that are not your main residence, of course. You don't pay it in the house that you live in. You only pay it on the investment. And that, as far as the government is concerned, is fair cop. If you're going to make money, then we're going to make money. And that's just business, really, I suppose. But if it's your own home and you've lived in that home, there is no capital gains tax because you've already paid your stamp duty. So that, I think it's maybe a misgiving in the numbers, but then the people and the properties that have sold and made that kind of money for the government are inherited properties or properties that have been left to the family. And so subsequently CGT is going to be payable, let alone death duties and other duties that are also due, but they will collect. You won't go past go without going to jail, as they say.
So we'll keep an eye on CGT. Let's look at lastly the 5% mortgage guarantee. So interestingly, on this, I think the point being that a lot of people are saying, well, actually, the rates that you're going to get, even though the government will back the scheme and protect the lenders for the 5%, you're going to be better off if you can run to the 10% because the deals are going to be so much more attractive.
Yes, I mean, I like the idea of the 95% mortgage because it does give people a chance to step up onto the first run of the property ladder. However, I also understand and accept that the rates are going to be a little bit higher because the risks are much higher, Paul. That's how it's always been. As long as I've been in the business, it's 95% mortgages were always available, but it meant that there was other penalties, indemnity insurances, other insurances that you had to take out to protect it, and so forth. And obviously, the government is offering a guarantee protection to the lenders up to £600,000 on a 95% purchase. And that somewhere along the line would have to be paid for. It will probably be paid in the form of some sort of indemnity insurance that a buyer would have to take out, and that could cost another £1,500, £2,000, depending on the value of the property. And I haven't sort of looked into that on the basis that I've discussed a 95% mortgage for some time. But I agree with you in the sense that if people have a 90% or an 85%, then the risk is lower for the lender, and because the buyer's got more of a stake in the deal, and therefore the rates are more acceptable and much better, and therefore your monthly payments would be better as well. And the other part of it is the interest-only part. The interest-only part was what fueled the housing market, because everybody was able to just buy and thought, well, by the time I get to the end of the 25 years, I probably won't be here, or I'd probably move and why not do that? So the capital repayment mortgages kind of took a toll back in the days when they started bringing endowments, which were also a complete disaster, because they were never going to cover the value of the mortgages. So it's really a chat. So I suppose the reality of this is that 1.99 sounds better than £2 and a penny, and therefore the market will now get a chance to fuel itself by saying there's 95% mortgages available, but the chances are that really there will be hidden costs in the 95%, and it's a good market. But for those that haven't got that, then 95% is a great opportunity. By the way, those costs normally are added to the mortgage. At least they were in my early days when I was doing mortgages. I don't do mortgages now, and I'm not going to say that I'm going to profess to give you the answers to that. But generally speaking, in terms of mortgage business, they will have probably put those costs onto the loan. So let's say hypothetically you borrowed £100,000 and you put £5,000 down as a deposit. You might have some other costs, so your borrowing would still be over £100,000, and then you'll pay interest only on that. So your capital won't get repaid, but your interest will be paid on a monthly basis for the term of 25 years. Whereas you can have mortgages perhaps with lower, more deposit, lower interest rates, lesser other commitments, and potentially, and of course the other is capital repayment, which does get very expensive. So talk to a mortgage advisor and get your guidance, or talk to the lender. That was something that we were hoping to have on board today, but unfortunately technicalities have not allowed us to do that. But hopefully we could do that another time. But the main thing was to be able to provide the guidance and the steps on those 95% mortgages, 5% deposit. And I think from memory, it is actually open to not just new homes, which is where the key was previously. It was only open to new homes. And then there's always a discussion that new homes may be slightly more expensive than they would be as a second-hand home. So I think the 95% is open to all homes.
Yeah.
As opposed to just new homes. That is a great opportunity to buy a property that you think, well, actually I don't want to be living in a brand new box. I would rather have my property which is close to my family or parents, got a bigger garden, etc. But I can now at least get a 95% mortgage on that, as opposed to saying that was out of my reach. So it's excellent news for the first time buyers that can now get on the property ladder with a lower deposit. And considering what I've said earlier in our program, that people have not had the time to be out this last year, it's given them a chance to have some savings, and they can actually utilize that. So a perfect opportunity, perfect time in order to sort of go out there and put your foot on the first rung of the ladder and become a homeowner. We are a nation of homeowners, and we like it. And I like it.
So, Joe, we've got a topic of the week to discuss. Tell us what we're talking about this week.
Well, the topic of the week, of course, as you know, I always try and give some tips and guidances of what I think is important to have in our properties. And I think one of the things that we have got a mindset is that we've had time at home. Those that have, spring is in the air. Sad to hear the other day, I think it's yesterday on news, that the daffodils can't be picked because we haven't got the workers to come over and hand pick the daffodils. But the daffodils in Devon, the daffodil fields are looking fantastic. And so spring being in the air, I think the subject has got to be the gardens, really. And this is the opportunity to tidy up and get the lawns cut and get the over thing. Everything is about presentation to a large extent, when it comes to property. And if it's attractive at the, as they say, curb appeal, if it's attractive as you pull up, the chances are the rest of it could be good, and you could always change it. But so the gardens are very important. DIY is going to be on the horizon. So if Rightmove thinks that they've had a lot of phone calls, I'm pretty certain B&Q have probably had loads of calls too, because all of a sudden there's going to be a lot of people that turn around and say, well, actually, I need to update my kitchen and bathroom and so forth. So, do look at that part of it. So the gardens, especially the fronts, are really, really cannot tell you enough how important the facade, the front, the first 10 seconds of your house, your home, your property, your commercial, anything, how important that is, because that's almost the window, that's the shop window. At Christmas time, obviously not last year, but other times, you go into London, you drive in and you see people like Harrods, and you see people like Selfridges and Harvey Nicks and all these other people that make a lot of effort making their shop window look nice. And part of that strategy is, if the shop window looks nice and the front looks nice, people want to go inside. They want to go inside, there's a chance that they're going to buy something. That's just an old adage, isn't it? If it doesn't look right, you're not going to look at it. And so I will continue to say to people, homes must look attractive. Take the opportunity, get those things done. And where possible, I know it's a horrible job to say, but you're going to have to go and clear some of that litter. Those idiots, chuck out their cars as they go past after they've had their burgers and things, and makes the streets look rubbish. These are all things that actually add value to our neighborhood, to our home. I suppose remember it was Margaret Thatcher's strategy. I think keep Britain tidy. Well, if we all work together, we could make a lot of difference in the things that are around us. But more than anything else, it would affect the values of your home, which is the biggest investment most people ever make. So protect it, and protect it well.
That's reminding me I must get the lawnmower out myself if I can dust it down from the shed from having not used it since September, I don't think. But that's a good rousing rally cry to get me out there today, Joe. So thanks for the inspiration on that. And thank you for all the other comments today. And thank you for watching our show. We're back again next Sunday for more Property Matters, where we will discuss the news of the week as regards to property. And please do get in touch with us if you'd like to, propertymatterstv@gmail.com. Or, of course, always comment on the video below if you wish to do so on any of the things we're talking about. Thanks ever so much for watching. We'll see you again next week.